Hello, everybody. Welcome to Rock, Paper, Hand Grenades. I'm Matt Connerton, and with me, of course, is the Honorable Gary S. Hopper. Back in your usual seat.
Yes, my usual.
Oh, actually, I'm sorry. It was 2 weeks ago you were sitting over there.
Yeah, that
last
was
week.
when you and Norm were interviewing me.
That's right. Yes.
Oh, by the way, that reminds me. Just for my own safety, I think I need you. After the last couple of weeks, I need you to start my truck for me tonight.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Huh.
Because 2 weeks ago we talked about Ruby Ridge, and we got some people who are pretty angry at me.
Tom Ford from Stir It Up called, and Norm ended up hanging up on him. Yes.
And then last week I made the joke about clubbing seals and
yes.
or going clubbing.
Right, going clubbing
And so if you would be so kind as to start my truck, so that
are you having troubles? I'm not sure why you would. You're having trouble starting it. What's
no, yeah, that's it. I'm having trouble starting.
Oh,
it. I just thought maybe you'd be better at it.
Oh, sure.
Exactly.
Huh.
Yeah.
Something about that. Why do I feel funny about that?
I don't know why you feel funny about a lot of stuff.
Yeah, I don't know.
You're just a funny guy.
I feel like I'm in danger.
No.
All right,
No,
I trust you.
I would never. I would
guess.
no. I would never.
Yeah.
I would never do anything.
Right. Huh. Yeah. How come? That reminds me. How come the other day, like last week, you brought like a donut or something, and you asked me to taste it for you before you ate it? What was that about?
Oh, I just wasn't sure. I'm allergic to nuts.
Right.
So I wasn't
so you
sure
want to
if it
make
had
sure there was no
nuts.
nuts
Yeah,
in it.
that was it. I wasn't. Yeah, no.
Okay, because
no.
that was weird too, and I felt funny about that. I was like, why does Gary
Yeah.
want me to, take a bite of this donut?
No, Matt. There's nothing. I would never do anything to endanger your life.
Right.
or
Okay.
anything like
All right.
that.
Good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
You and me, you and I,
I mean, it's fine because I'm not allergic to nuts, so it wouldn't
Right,
have
exactly,
bothered me. but
exactly,
I
see?
I didn't know. Huh.
That's why I did that.
Yeah. Okay.
Let's see. Our guest tonight is Chuck Rolachek, but Chuck has left the building. No, he isn't here yet, so I don't know. He's running for executive council. I kind of wanted to have some a guest on. He was actually one of the few that had a really easy website to navigate. I mean, you do executive council, District 4, and his was like, whoever did his web design made sure he was one of the first things to come up on Google.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, it is actually really good. And so I called him, and he wanted to come on. So he's either lost or he watched some.
You got a bug crawling down your shirt.
I do.
Yeah, right there.
It's probably that's probably not a bug. That's probably one of those frickin' things the government makes to spy on people.
Probably, yeah.
I think. Look at it.
Wow.
See how it's just kind of crawling?
Yeah.
It's got wings, but it's crawling.
Yeah, yeah.
It's probably taking video
Most likely.
of us right now.
That is creepy.
It is creepy. It's stupid, too, because they could have just watched a TV show.
Yeah.
So it's like a waste. Ooh. It's dead now.
Yeah, yeah. It's fun
But
to kill
anyway,
stuff.
Yeah.
I like to kill bugs.
Yeah, I remember when I was little, I used to love killing anthills.
Yeah.
Pouring stuff down the anthills and lighting it on fire.
Oh, really?
It ain't right.
Yeah, they're bugs.
Yeah. There was actually, somebody was actually, it's one thing for a kid to do something that sadistic, but there was this researcher who was curious about how ants communicated.
Yeah.
So he did research and tried to understand, how they find their way and everything else. And what he determined was it was all basically chemical.
Really?
Like, they follow the tracks of the other ones because they can, I don't know whether it's smell or whatever, but they can detect the chemicals or the, whatever, the smell, and they can follow each other's tracks.
No kidding.
So that's how they, if you see like a trail of them taking a leaf apart or something like that, that's why there's a trail.
That makes sense. Okay.
So anyway, he found the chemical that indicated an ant was dead.
Yeah.
Because if an ant's dead, they take it out of the colony and they cast it out.
Yeah.
And so he put some of that chemical on one of the ants that was alive.
Yeah.
And the other ants kept taking it out and putting it out of the anthill. And that ant would continue to try to get back in, then be taken out again.
No kidding. That's interesting.
It's pretty sadistic, but funny.
Yeah, yeah. I used to light ants on fire when I was a kid.
I know. It's probably not right. I'm sure the ASPCA and PETA and
PETA.
stuff like PETA would be like all over your butt.
Now, every time you kill a bunch of ants, that's one less picnic ruined
Yes,
in America.
exactly.
So it's a
So kill an
patriotic
ant
thing
for
to
a
do.
picnic is what you're saying.
That's right. That's right.
Exactly. So we were talking before the show. Matt and I were talking about sense of humor, and Matt and I have a pretty dry sense of humor. And sometimes I wonder how people take that, because I say some absolutely ridiculous things on like Club and Seals last week was my
Yes.
joke.
Yes.
And I was telling him, I used to work at Summit Packaging in Manchester, and I used to work second shift. And I don't know why I come up with these things. It's usually like instantaneous. It's not something I plan out.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
The seal one I planned out, but this one I didn't plan out. Some guy was asking me if I go hunting. I said, yeah, I like to go hunting, because this is back, when my eyes were halfway decent. And he asked me where do I go and stuff like that. And just out of the blue, for some reason, I just decided to be totally bizarre. And I says, I get sick of going out and not seeing anything. So what I do now is I go out and, before I go hunting, I drop acid. So that I get a lot more shots off,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And the guy, I don't know what, it's, you can take it a couple different ways, but
Yeah.
evidently the next day somebody asks you, you don't really do that, do you? So what bothered, on one hand, I thought it was kind of funny that somebody would be that gullible to believe that somebody would do that.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, it calls into question, maybe I am crazy enough where it's believable that I would have done that.
Right.
So
Right.
either way, it was just funny that if you get too dry a sense of humor, people can take it the wrong way.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Especially people who are real serious people.
Yeah.
But
Has that ever gotten you into trouble in terms of your political career?
probably, but I wouldn't have noticed, because I'm also, not only am I crazy, I'm also pretty unobservant.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
somebody can be pretty mad at me and I won't know.
Right. Right.
Unless they say, hey, I'm mad at you. I don't have a clue.
Is that our guest?
Oh, our guest!
Well, he's not quite as late as John Heichel
No,
was.
Heichel
last time.
had him beat on that
That's
one.
right. he didn't quite do a Heichel.
You didn't, yeah. How you doing, Chuck?
Gentlemen,
How you doing? Nice to meet you.
it's like a maze here. I've gone through a corn maze. This was like a corn maze. Every door is locked and go down another floor and then go down another floor.
Did you
Well-
find the actual corn?
I didn't.
Oh,
You didn't?
Yeah.
No?
We just turned it into ethanol anyway.
I apologize.
That's all right.
That's okay.
All right. We'll
That's all
forgive you someday, but probably not till after the election.
Yes. Yes.
Fair
We'll have
enough.
to wait.
Exactly.
Fair
Yes.
enough.
Oh, what was the other one I wanted to talk about was, before we get started, is Durbin. Senator Durbin.
Yes. Dick Durbin he's from Illinois, right?
I don't know where he's
Yeah,
from.
he's
But,
From Illinois.
Illinois. Yeah.
I'm from Illinois.
Oh, okay. So anyway, Dick Durbin was being interviewed on Fox. He was asked, the party platform, which I'm sure Chuck is familiar with, is basically a set of beliefs that the party holds in general.
Yeah.
Okay, that doesn't mean by any stretch of the imagination that every Republican has to believe in every part of it.
Right. Right.
But it's a general guideline. If you were voting Republican, you could look at that platform and have a reasonable idea. If you checked them with a name with a Republican next to it, that's a reasonable idea of what they tend to believe.
Right. Right.
Okay, that's why I got in so much trouble last year by a lot of the newer people in the legislature were calling me a rhino because I voted against right to work, because it's the new big thing for Republicans is right to work. It was added to the platform, I think, a few years ago.
Yeah.
And I never voted for it before it was part of the platform, and I still don't. And but on all the other things, if you look at the platform, I'm probably around 90-something%.
Yeah.
And but anyway, so the platform is a relevant document.
Sure.
If you vote against a platform on all the issues, you're probably not a Republican.
Right.
You're a rhino. You're a
Yeah.
Republican in name only. So anyway, so that document is relevant. So they were interviewing Senator Durbin, about the platform, the Democratic platform, which they had decided on.
Yeah.
And one of the things was that they had actually taken the word God out of the platform.
Yeah, I heard that earlier today, actually.
and it always has been in the platform, and it was in X number of times in 2008, and X number of times in 2004 and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And it's really funny. You know, in the Shakespeare it says, "Methinks thou protest too much."
Yeah.
If you get a politician who reacts that way, which fundamentally means if somebody overreacts to a question, they're probably hiding something.
Right. Right.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Oh, yeah.
If you if I say, Matt, how many bones did you smoke before the show today, and you get wicked pissed at me and start yelling at me.
I don't do that. What do you mean? Why? What?
Yeah, exactly.
How dare you?
It's probably because
Right.
Matt was hitting the pipe again. So
Yeah. Although I wouldn't be upset if it were that, but that might not be a good example because
No,
I would
probably
if
no,
I'd be more like, no, man.
No.
I don't do that.
oh yeah, that's
man.
probably a bad example.
What are you
But
talking about, man?
Don't be bothering me, man. I've been smoking 20 bones a day. So anyway, if somebody overreacts,
Yeah.
it kind of makes you suspicious that they are likely full of crap. So
Right.
so the guy from Fox says, why did you take God out of the platform? And Durbin immediately reacts with, what are you trying to say, that the Democratic Party is a godless party? Is that what you're trying to say? And he said, no, I'm not implying anything. I am specifically asking you, what was the decision process? Why did you make that? And that's all he responded.
Really?
He would
Yeah.
not answer the question.
Yeah.
It was quite telling.
He's an emotional guy, though, Dick Durbin.
Really?
I remember when they were trying to confirm John Bolton to be the envoy to the UN or whatever the
Yep.
official title is, and I remember him crying, Dick Durbin actually crying about it. And that was a long time ago. But
Oh, that definitely makes him a Democrat. Okay, so anyway.
well, John Boehner cries. So,
Oh, really?
oh yeah, John Boehner. Oh, he's a big crier.
Yeah, I'm a sensitive guy, too. Anyway, Chuck Rolacek, you're running for District 4. And first, before we get started, I kind of want, because every 2 years we had the two candidates in the Republican Party running for sheriff in the last month, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
And the reason one reason I had them on is to talk about what a sheriff does, because people every 2 years they go to the polls and there's a list of candidates they vote for, and a lot of people don't even check off executive council. It's one of those, they don't really know what it is, so they don't, the safe thing is not to vote at all, because people don't understand what executive council is. And rough thing is the founders of this state were particularly paranoid about the king, and were particularly upset with the governor appointed by the king to lord over New Hampshire. And so when they established the position of governor, they basically made the position of governor in New Hampshire is one of the weakest in the country.
Yeah.
And part of the reason it's weak is for the governor to sign a contract, he needs the approval of the council. And so based on that, what you want to tell people a little bit about what your executive council? Yours is an open seat too, right?
It is not.
It is
No,
not.
it's a Republican primary at
Okay.
this point, and so only Republicans and independents will be able to vote for me or the other two candidates next Tuesday. I try to explain it simply as it's the board of directors for the governor of New Hampshire.
That's a good way, yeah.
It's 5 people who sit on an advisory board that, again, doesn't appoint people to various positions, judgeships, commissioners, department heads. They confirm. The governor is the one that still brings forward the names and the people, and we just confirm. But let's face it, it's a $5 billion budget on an annual basis, 5+. There's a lot to be concerned about. It's a 2-year election term, so there isn't any security in the position. The governor only has a $10,000 signing authority, which I've already said in a couple of interviews that I would increase. That if he can't, if the people of New Hampshire can't elect someone who's capable of taking it from, let's say, $25,000, the executive council shouldn't have to approve. I mean, my CFO in my own organization has $10,000 signing authority. I think the governor should have at least that.
So,
But
so up to that limit, he can sign something without the,
99.99 he can sign, but he has to ask the governor's council if it's over 10,000.
okay.
So he builds an addition or a separate bathroom on the wing in Concord at the State House, he has to get approval.
Yeah, okay.
And for personal contracts, I believe it's 2,500. So I've already said I'd like to raise both those limits so that the council is dealing with a little bit meatier issues.
Makes sense,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
But it's a very important position.
Yeah, you guys actually get paid.
I haven't heard that. I've
Yeah.
heard
Oh, no.
$100 a year.
No, 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 no. No.
Expense money?
No, you get like I think $5,000.
Oh,
a year.
maybe. Okay.
Or for a 2-year term.
Maybe. I honestly, everybody's very mum on that.
Yeah,
my
no, you
wife
guys
thinks I'm
actually get-
taking a pay cut and
Oh, you
going into
are, I'm
public
sure.
service and giving up my job for 2 years. But it's a key position and it's an important position. I mean, right now we've had at the present time we have 5 Republican counselors with a Democratic governor. Who knows what it's going to be the next time around? It won't be 5-0 because I believe someone's running unopposed as a Democrat in one of the districts.
Yep.
So we'll have at least one Dem, and it very easily could be up to 3 Dems and up to 4 Republicans.
Do you know what you just said?
I did.
You
I
said
said
three-
up to 3 Democrats that could
Oh.
win the position, and up to 4 Republicans
Oh,
could
oh.
win the positions.
Oh, okay. I thought you meant it was adding it up to 7, but
No.
now I get what you're saying. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm not that smart. That's why I'm only in the state legislature, you know. That's why I only work for $100 a year. Yeah, I think your example is correct. It's like what did you say, board?
Board of Directors.
Board of Directors, because that's fundamentally what it is. It was designed in the Constitution to try to control the excesses of a governor. And so that even though, like for instance, like you said, he appoints people, judges, and different things, it's still up to the Executive Council to approve him. So therefore, he still has to negotiate who he appoints. It's
Yes.
it's not completely up to him to appoint, like, in other words, I'm sure there's some horse trading that goes on in the process. You know, you give me one Republican judge, and we'll do a that kind of thing. So,
Especially if the council is mixed.
yeah,
I
exactly.
mean, it's been interesting. The last year we've had 5 Republicans and a Democratic governor, and it could be any combination thereof going forward.
Yeah.
But there's 3 main things that they really focus on. It's the confirmation of appointments. It is managing the budget and making sure the money is spent properly. Really being accountable to the citizens. I look at the third thing as the highway plan, the 10-year highway plan. Talking to Councilor Wazorek, he said that there's a lot of meetings in the hinterlands and 19 communities that I'm responsible for, of which as of yesterday I've visited all 19.
Yeah.
So I accomplished my goal of being to every community in the district before the primary.
You sound like Rick
And,
Santorum. What do you had to visit every ward or something in Ohio or something?
Oh,
like
in
that.
Iowa?
Iowa,
Yeah,
Iowa.
I remember that. Yeah, and I think he did it, right?
Yeah, he did. He made
yeah.
it to every single one
I
of them.
felt it
Yeah.
important to do that. 19 communities. I mean, Ray Burton, I think, has about 60 communities, but 19 was a challenge, but we got it accomplished. And but the 3 things are just, again, being accountable to the budget, confirming the appointments, and then the highway plan. So, important position. And big shoes to fill with Councilor Wazorek, who's been in there for 10 years. He along with Councilor Burton actually saw a Republican governor in their earlier terms, and then it's been John Lynch for the last 8 years out of the Wazorek's 10. So Councilor Wazorek said there's a lot of work to do.
Yeah, I know. My second term was Craig Benson as a state legislator. He was actually not that bad, but he wasn't a politician. He didn't have a clue. Because he was a business manager, he's used to people, telling people what to do and they do it, not trying to negotiate with a whole bunch of different constituencies and groups of people.
I've often heard that criticism of him. Yeah, that
Yeah,
he couldn't adapt to that.
He couldn't adapt. Because he had some really cool ideas. If you look at his voting record, it was really strong Republican, but he stepped on toes almost right off the bat and continued to step on them until he lost a lot of support, and we ended up with Lynch. But
Craig ran a big business. I've run a small business over the last 25 years, and I've said more than a few times, life isn't like Burger King. You don't always have it your way, and as a small business person, you really have to negotiate with your customers on your pricing. You have to negotiate with your employees on their wage and salaries. You have to negotiate with all your vendors and all your contractors. And I think it's a lot of give and take, and I think that makes me very qualified for this position. It isn't just my way or the highway, and I think it's a position that you find a middle ground. You find some agreement. You have to massage some things to get resolution, and a small business person. In a restaurateur, you're very visible. You're kind of in a fishbowl.
Well, you actually haven't gone into that. A lot of people might not know where you came from.
Okay, Gary. I actually came to New Hampshire 25 years ago, 27. I started my business 25 years ago. I moved here from Denver, Colorado, and I was transferred to a major Fortune 500 company at United Airlines, and I moved to Boston and lived in New Hampshire. My job was in Boston. And I had a 7-hour drive home on a Friday night from Logan. And I said, usually that ride took me about an hour and 5 minutes. I said, there's got to be a better way. And shortly thereafter, I said, I think I want to become an entrepreneur. So I looked it up in the dictionary, and I said, yep, I think that's what I want to do. And surprisingly, or just coincidentally, I had an opportunity to be Manchester Airport's first airline caterer, and it was just a fluke. I was on an airplane that had no catering.
Yeah.
And the pilot came to the back of the plane and said, I see you're a company employee. I see you work out of Boston. I see you're enjoying your champagne and orange juice. We have no food this morning. And I said, well, what can I do? And he says, I got about an hour and a half. And long and short of it, my wife and I jumped in our car and went out to Brown Avenue. Remember the days when Manchester Airport had kind of like a honor system parking system out in front of the terminal?
Yeah.
And that's where we parked. And I went to Brown Avenue and bought Dunkin' Donuts and coffee and filters and paper towels and all these things, and went back, catered the airplane. We flew to Chicago. And about a week later, a boss of mine said, find me a caterer in Manchester. And I really was a company employee in Boston's Logan, and I was very happy working as a company employee, and I said, maybe I do want to be an entrepreneur. So I said, I got good news and bad news. I found you a caterer in Manchester. I said, but you're going to have to find a new general manager in Boston. And that was the beginning of my entrepreneurial career. And that was in 1987, and 25 years later, and about, I think it's 8 businesses later, here I am.
Yep.
So I've started a lot of businesses. I think I'm a poster boy for small business in New Hampshire because I know the system, I know what you have to do. And it used to be a lot easier. You used to be able to, pay your fee, get your license, get your, inspectors to come by your facility. There's a lot more red tape now. It's a lot more difficult. And I think it turns a lot of people off.
Yeah.
And we could get people off the unemployment ranks, whether it's landscaping, restaurant, dry cleaning, whatever.
Yeah, I know. In my own town, I noticed that there's some towns are particularly more amendable to people starting businesses. And to me, I don't understand why somebody doesn't have you go into the town hall, I want to start a business. They give you a sheet of paper that says, okay, this is exactly what you have to do, and that's it. You don't have to pay off the fire chief. You don't have to pay off the police officers. What you have to do is get this form done, and here's a copy of them if you need them.
There's a lot of truth to that.
It
Gary.
should be so
Some towns are
profoundly
like that.
simple that and you can't be, shackled by ordinances and things like that.
Regulations and inspections
And this inspection and that inspection, because they don't necessarily don't work on the same time frame as you. You should almost,
Yeah.
be by default inspected until they come and check to see if you're not, and then fix it later.
Right.
You know what I mean? That kind of thing. I don't understand it, because towns and cities live by business.
Right, and if they want that tax revenue that the business that you're starting is going to generate,
You
then
would
they
think
should
they
want
would
to make
be
it easy.
bending over backwards to try to
Yeah.
help you start a business, not impeding every step forward.
Yeah,
I do think the banks need to step forward too, and I think the leadership of the state has to work with the banking community and just say that I don't know if it'd be a state-backed loan, but there's a lot of creative people out there. There's a lot of opportunities. There's a lot of empty storefronts, and I think with a collective effort, we could fill some of those storefronts, and we could work. And I'm not talking $1 million loans or $500,000 loans. I'm talking, $250,000 loans for someone to get a small restaurant or cafe open, to get a small landscaping business open, or a car detailing business, or things like that. I mean, let's get people back to work. And in 1987, it was very easy to do that. It was simple. It was exciting, and you were proud, and you snapped your suspenders and said, "Wow, look at my shingle outside."
Yeah.
And I put a lot of people to work over the years. And but I had the resources. It's kind of like once you're in the game, it's easier to stay in
Sure,
the game.
sure.
It's the folks that just can't break through that
Yeah.
first opportunity.
Well, plus, too, I mean, you mentioned putting out that shingle. In most towns, and I hear it's particularly bad in Manchester, you got all kinds of zoning laws that are going to dictate to you how large or how small the shingle can be and how high off the ground, and they just make it so difficult. It's actually one of the reasons why, because I used to be, and you know this, Gary, because I've talked about it, I used to be a Democrat. And now I'm an independent, and one of the things that drove me out of the Democratic Party, even though I still have a lot of liberal attitudes on some things,
Wicked bad, too. He's
When it-
horrible.
but one of the things that drove me out is because I'm an entrepreneur myself, and the anti-business sort of attitude that exists, where they want to legislate everything and over-regulate it. And some regulation I think is necessary, but I'm talking about, like making sure factories aren't polluting the water and things like that. But things that just inhibit and discourage small business, I don't get it. And it's one of the things that drove me out of the party and said, well, I can't hang with these people. They're so reflexively anti-business, and I don't understand why.
Yeah, it seems like they go out of their way to almost kill business. I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, you had on a national level. Now I forget who his czar is, who's in charge of the environment, but he was going around deliberately putting, like people who were trying to mine coal and things like that, doing whatever he could to put them out of business.
Right.
He's on tape saying it.
Yeah.
And somehow, and Obama talks about diversifying the energy source, and he's got this guy going out trying to kill any business that would start who's, doing coal.
Yeah.
Or stopping people from drilling oil and stopping this and stopping that.
Right.
And then, it's just, it is a problem with the Democratic Party, but it is also a problem in the cities anyway that are not necessarily partisan. It's just...
I just know I'd want to fill up these empty storefronts in some of our major cities, the Nashuas and Manchesters and things like that, and I would make it as easy as possible.
Yeah.
As long as there isn't any, true violations environmentally or legally or anything like that. And I think that, I often said I wish we had, kind of a fund, an incubator fund, where small businesses could go to a panel. And I'm hoping that if I get to the executive council, I can bend a new governor's ear and say, let's get some money available for people who come to this committee or this panel and say, I've got this idea for, widgets, maybe the next Velcro. And here's what I would need, and here's where my little factory would be, and this is what I would. And I'd like to see the state partner up with some of them and have some close scrutiny and have some tight follow-up on how they're doing and make it advantageous for the banks that take the little bit of the risk. Because you'll get people off the unemployment lines and fill up those storefronts. And,
Right.
we all have said a job is way more than money. People feel good about their jobs. And I know when I hire some people or hire additional people, it's not just that they have a job. I mean, it's a lot of it who they are.
Sure.
And people want to work. It's interesting, as being an entrepreneur for 25 years, you used to have to motivate employees. You don't have to motivate employees too much anymore. Everybody's pretty self-motivated. It's interesting how the same person 10 years ago wasn't very motivated is extremely motivated today.
Yeah, I think it's true. I think most people, I think most people feel better about themselves if they're actually making a living and getting off of unemployment and things like
No,
that.
absolutely.
I wouldn't because I'm a lazy, no good for nothing.
Sure. Yeah.
But that's different.
Right.
Well,
Well, there's room for everybody.
yeah, exactly. But it's true. But like you said, the obstacles. I was looking into starting a like doing a street vendor type thing, because those can be kind of lucrative.
They can.
But it's like, I don't know how many dollars a day to get a peddler's license in Manchester. And the thing is, I think a lot of that is people lobby against the street vendors because they're competing with somebody else, and so they raise up the fee so that it becomes not lucrative to run a street vending thing, so that the people that have the brick and mortar aren't competing against street vendors, and a lot of the stuff is like that. Where it's all political, and like as you said, 25 years ago, it wasn't that big a deal to start a business, but I think over the years we've built all these obstacles, and probably if you look into them, most of them are political.
Probably. But I know for me, the first business led to the second business, which led to the third business, and I just kept hiring people. And at one point, right around 9/11, because I was in the airline business, I had a couple hundred employees in New England and outside of New England. New Hampshire was still the main base, and the corporate office was here. So New Hampshire was getting the bigger share or the lion's share of the revenue and the taxes and things like that. I just think if we make it a little bit more inviting and there's more encouragement, we'd get some people to kind of get off their fannies and say, yeah, I'm going to take a shot at that. I'm going to try that.
Now,
And,
on your website it said that you after 9/11 that kind of changed. Why? What was the? Is it your connections with Al Qaeda or?
Oh my! Well, I had no idea.
I know. Yeah,
that's the other governor candidate, right? That has the name that someone said to me today. Why would she?
Oh, Maggie
Hassan. Yeah.
Let me just say that I was in the airline catering business when 9/11 occurred, and I knew that would have a dramatic impact. And over a course of 4 years, I lost a very large, a $10 million business, had to lay off a lot of people, had to close operations.
Is it
the
just
airlines,
because the regulations got so ridiculous that you couldn't function? Or?
The airlines didn't have money to put food on the planes, Gary. They only had money for security, and they had money for air marshals to fly on board. They had money to pay off the claims, for all the folks that were killed in the World Trade Center and all the rest. And there was no extra money, no line item for food service or amenities.
Oh, okay.
So they eventually just took food off the plane as we knew it back in the 70s and 80s and 90s. That being said, I worked hard to continue to try to do other businesses that would keep my employees, working. I bought a minor league baseball team. I did it in anticipation that I might get the Manchester franchise when I know that Mayor Baines was talking to baseball teams, and
Yep.
my baseball team was in Lynn, Massachusetts, and my New Hampshire employees would make all the food and sandwiches and 10-foot subs or 5-foot subs and things like that to be
Yeah.
sold down there. And then we ended up doing a janitorial business, and I eventually opened another restaurant. And so I like keeping people working, and there's opportunities out there. And like I said, I felt I was lucky. I had the bank's ear. I had a track record. It was easy for me to move forward. But even as I tried to get some employees or key employees to kind of branch out and do things, it was very tough for them to get started. So I think anything we can do to make it easier for people to hang that shingle, because when they do that, there's a sense of pride and accomplishment, and they're going to make that thing work. And they're going to put a few people to work, and geez, they may just be a success and pay some business enterprise tax or business profits tax. And I mean, the trickle down is really good.
Yep. Yeah, I know it's not easy, and like you said, I think the government, state and local, has made that hurdle to get your foot in the door, so to speak, pretty Herculean.
Herculean?
Or, yeah, one of them. So that, like you said, you have the credibility to actually start something because you've already done it. But somebody that's just starting out, it's like, wow.
Right. It's a little insurmountable. And again, so I going back to the original question, I felt this position doesn't come available that often, and this is something that utilizes the skill set of a manager or an executive type person, which I'd like to think I am. And I feel, now's the time to make a difference. I mean, hopefully, Mitt Romney with his business experience is getting people's attention. I can truly say, I'm proud of the fact that I went from a corporate suit to a suit with my name on it. I mean, I wore like a set of coveralls that said Chuck on it. And that was a little bit of a humbling experience, but positive in and of itself.
Yeah.
Good. You want to take that?
And we have a call. I think our friend there grabbed it.
Oh.
I guess we'll have to wait. It might not be for us.
Oh, sorry.
It's okay.
Sorry for the interruption. So what do you mean you had like a suit that had?
Well, I became a worker in my business,
Oh, okay,
and I literally had a work shirt that said Chuck.
Yeah.
So I was a working part of my team. I mean, this was truly bootstrapping it and, driving the truck and cooking the food and doing what I needed to do.
That's actually good.
It was very humbling, and
You know what?
I really built a rapport with my employees.
I'm going to forget the name of the company, but there was one company that I had a lot of regard for. It might have been Caterpillar, but I don't know. And one of the things, because I've been a tool maker my whole life, okay? Not an entrepreneur, because all I just wanted to do was make stuff and get, and if I made a living doing it, that was good enough for me, you know what I mean?
We're all different.
And, but there was one, I think it was Caterpillar, it might have been somebody else, but they required their new engineers to actually work on the factory floor for like a year or something, and doing different jobs, maybe assembly, maybe machining. So they had a complete and thorough understanding of the process before they actually sat there and started drafting new ideas.
Yeah.
And a lot of them wouldn't do it.
Really?
It was too degrading. They went to college to be, to wear suits and draw pictures, and that was it. It wasn't. So it's kind of refreshing to hear somebody in your situation that actually, had to, do what you were asking other people to do.
Well, I'll share with you a very quick story, probably the most enjoyable, or I should say gratifying story. Working the position in the early days of a small business and going from the corporate environment to your small own business, I remember driving my truck up to an airplane one day, and my guide man brought me in, and we opened the door, and the flight attendant comes out, and I said, "Good afternoon. And they said hello, and I said, here's your crew meals. We used to give meals to the crew that flew the plane,
Yeah.
which was different than food that the passengers ate in case anybody got sick, and every crew member had like 5 different meals, but the passengers all had 100 meals the same. So I said, Captain, where would you like your crew meals? And he said, how about in the trash? I said, in the trash? I said, we just made these about a half an hour ago. He goes, they're horrible. He goes, throw them in the trash. They're not any good. I said, oh, no, this isn't what the typical crew meal is. I said, we got a special approval to do fresh homemade meals right out of Manchester. He said, put them up there. So as I was changing the little liquor carts and doing something as demeaning as taking vodka bottles off that were drunk and putting new vodka bottles on and sodas and all.
Oh, the little nips.
The
you
little
mean?
nips.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
pilot comes back and says, hey, buddy, he said, this food, it's pretty good. He said, where's this from? I said, this is from Premier Catering. He said, no. He goes, what company is it from? He says, what company owns it? I said, it's Premier Catering. He said, pal. He goes, who owns the company? I said, you're looking at him. And I'm on my knees, and I'm reaching in, cleaning out all the old trash and stuff like that. And he couldn't believe that was he was used to the Marriotts and the Sky Chefs and
Right.
all that.
Right.
And I said, this is Manchester, and we're glad you enjoyed your meal. He goes, wait till I tell everybody back at headquarters. So it got to the point where every time I did that flight and I drove to the plane, the crew would say, are these homemade meals from
Yeah.
Manchester? And Manchester got a spot. But it was one of those that here we kind of took it away from the big corporate environment and everything being standard and everything cookie cutter,
Yeah.
and kind of said, this is how a small business functions. You kind of have to be different than the big corporations.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you have to. Yeah, if you're gonna have a small corporation, you need to offer almost more than.
You do, and you have to offer it quicker, and you have to be more efficient. And truthfully, I hope to bring that to Concord. I hope to say to them, why do we need 3 liquor commissioners?
Right.
And they're all equal? Why can't we have a commissioner or a chairman and a deputy chairman, eliminate a position, save X hundreds of thousands of dollars, and have a more streamlined government?
Yeah.
And I could see doing that in 25 other departments or divisions.
Yeah.
And just be more efficient. And, where there's duplication, eliminate duplication, waste, and fraud. Boy, I bet we'd save some money in that
Run it like a
regard.
business.
We use
Yeah.
scratch paper to make our copies for internal office memos. Do we need to use fresh paper? I mean, little
Right.
things like that.
Right,
and
right, yeah.
recycle, and just a variety of things of that nature.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do we have to keep records on some of this stuff that nobody ever looks at?
Yes.
Maybe we
Yes,
don't
you
have
do.
to keep records on
Actually,
some
you
of this.
do.
Well-
Because no, it's a different environment, because what happens at the state level is everything is subject to the right to know request. So if you don't have that paperwork, or it's like that, I think that's where Kelly Ayotte got in a boatload of trouble, is the AG's office has very limited funds, and they have some older computers. So, and this is what their story is, and it was told to me by somebody I trust, so I believe it. So politically you kind of say, yeah, right. But I trust the person that told me on this one, was that fundamentally they just don't have that much hard drive space. And so when all the emails back and forth from Kelly Ayotte and this thing over FRM were gone. And that's because as soon as she had left for more than a few months, they formatted the hard drive and set it up for somebody else.
I see.
Oh,
Okay, so all those things were gone.
yeah.
And they get in trouble because under the right to know request, they should be able to access those emails and find out who said what to who.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
there is, it's inefficient, but it's also under a completely different set of microscopes. You know what I mean?
There's probably some instances like that, Gary, where I think you do need the records. But
you're-
again, that's the mentality, and I think never being in public office, so not being apolitical. I think that's I hate to be anything but apolitical. I guess it is what it is. I think that makes me a strong candidate to ask, why or why not more often than the next guy.
Yeah, you should. And I think what you would bring to the table is that, because a lot of times I think that's when one reason I was thinking of not running is because I'm jaded. I've been up there for almost a dozen years, and you almost get jaded by a lot of stuff. So after a while,
I can imagine, yeah.
yeah, after a while, you hear, people like, for instance, on the school funding debate. Okay, I had read the bill. I knew what the arguments were, pro and con, before I went to the House floor. And Channel 9 caught, we showed that on the TV. Channel, I was reading Shotgun News, okay? And it happened to be on a page, I don't know if you've ever seen Shotgun News, but it looks like a regular newspaper. And I opened it up, and it was a really pretty girl with a shotgun, holding a shotgun,
Which is hot.
Well, she was right? So it looked almost like kind of, mild porno. So Channel 9 said, well, had this person interview this person that said this and this person that said this, and some people weren't paying attention. And they had the picture for me from the back of looking at Shotgun News.
Yeah.
Well, the truth of the matter was I actually was paying attention. I knew what the debate was, and I knew what to press, how to vote. But you do get jaded after a while. And having somebody come up there with a completely fresh understanding is really, really good. Because of that, because you're looking at it from a completely different angle than the other politicians like myself who have been up there for so many years that we're not as open. I'm not as open-minded as I was when I was first up there, which is good and bad. It means I've heard all the arguments, but it also means I'm not as willing or as easy to jump on a new idea. You know what I mean?
Is that what you mean by being jaded? I mean, is
Yeah.
that part of that? Yeah.
I think so. I
Yeah.
think so. I think that's
Harder to get through to you to change your opinion?
Oh yeah, it would be, because it's like
Got 10 years of history.
I've got 10 years of history.
Yeah.
If they have medical marijuana, I've already heard all those arguments, so I don't sit in there for like 45 minutes or an hour while people are going back and forth to why we should or shouldn't do this bill.
Because some of the same things come up every year, right?
It's the same argument.
Yeah.
You know?
We have a
So, I think one of the awesome things, though, when I was a freshman, was just looking at all this stuff brand new was really, really interesting.
Yeah.
Is that a call or?
Yep, Roland is on there.
Roland. All right.
Roll 'em. Go ahead.
Hi, Roland. Welcome to Rock, Paper, Hand Grenades. What you got?
Yeah, that guest, he's a very successful businessman.
Mm-hmm.
And what I want to say is that, did he do that by himself?
No, Obama did it for him. Didn't you know that?
Yeah, that's what I want to, that's what I want to say, And do you know if he ever served Yellowbird Airline back in late 50s?
I did not, Roland. That was before my time. There's a lot of airlines I've served that aren't in existence today, from Western Airlines and Frontier Airlines and Allegheny Airlines, Air New England.
Back in the 50s, I used to go to Miami quite a bit, and it was real nice. It goes from from Manchester to Miami, no stops, no Philadelphia, no Atlanta, no nothing. From Manchester to Miami, and
So that's how they get the drugs up here that quick.
and guess what? We had a great meal. Times have changed,
Yeah, they do.
Peanut.
Those were the old days.
I'm glad that he did it by himself. He didn't have the guy upstairs. Thank you so much.
Thank
All right,
you.
Roland. Bye-bye. You didn't have the guy upstairs?
Hey, so anyway-
no help from God? Is that what you're saying?
No, I don't know. We're not going to. Republicans aren't taking God out of their plan. So I do have a bone to pick with you. It's on your website, and it says you've been married for 30 years.
Yes.
Wow.
I saw the picture of you standing next to your wife.
Yep.
Was she like 8? I mean, I don't know. Would you get married in Georgia or something like that? No, I mean, you can tell me. We
You
won't
married a
say
younger
anything.
woman? I admire that.
She's in her 50s. Let me just say
Wow,
that.
see? I knew I was going to nail him. That was
She's
the
in her
wrong
50s.
answer. You shouldn't answer that. No, she's going to kill you now.
I said in her 50s. 50-something, right?
Okay.
But that's very nice of you to say. And she's lived through it all. So, and interestingly enough, you know, when I started the business, it was, you needed a lot of support back then, because to go from a very good lifestyle and a corporate background to want to be an entrepreneur, but I came from an
That's a
entrepreneurial
huge-
family.
That's a huge leap.
It is. It is.
Yeah.
And I remember even the transition, you'll love this, the transition when I went from the corporate world and went to my own business. And I used to get a paycheck every 2 weeks. So I started the business, and she goes, "Do we have a paycheck this week?" And I said, No, it's next week. She goes, "Oh, okay." And then the next week came around. She goes, "Do I have a paycheck this week?" I said, No, it's the next week. She goes, "I thought it was last." Oh. I said, No, one more week. Third week came along.
Yeah.
She goes, "I better have a paycheck this week, because we have no diapers, we have no milk, we have no this, we have no that." And I remember borrowing on my Visa card to make payroll.
Wow.
But that was the only time I did it. And it was,
Yeah.
I didn't understand cash flow. I understood profits, balance sheets, income statements, but like I was owed all this money, but I had to pay money out.
Yeah.
And
Right. Yeah,
I
'cause
learned
everybody's
very
got-
quickly.
The corporate world has 30 days to pay, or 90, or
60,
whatever.
90,
Yeah, whatever the hell it
120.
is.
You think it's 30 or net 30, and you learn very quickly. At least at the restaurant business, most people pay that night, or American Express pays the next day.
Yeah.
But yeah, it takes a lot for the family to be involved in something like that.
Now, how long ago did you start the Chop House?
That was in 2005, Gary, and that was while I still had C.R. Sparks. You know, Mayor Baines was actually the one that said, "Let's build downtown and bring another restaurant down here." And it was a great idea in 2005. By the time the recession of 2008 came, it wasn't such a good idea. But you learn to persevere. And again, once you've, and this is what I say to my colleagues or my competitors or my other folks running against me, until you've been through these life experiences, you know, if I hadn't been through that, I might have already changed the Chop House. I might have downsized it or dumbed it down or whatever. And you learn to hang in there, because you know you'll kind of eventually get it back, and you have those experiences. And I think that would be very important in the executive council. Not going to panic if something's not perfect. Let's ride it out a little bit longer. But then there comes a time when you need to pull the trigger and say, this isn't working.
Right.
And whether it's a commissioner, whether it's a
You could pull the pin.
decision, you could.
That's
You could
true.
pull the pin. But you don't want to do that until it's
No,
all
no.
other avenues are explored.
Last resort.
So, here's a ridiculous idea, because that's usually my ideas are pretty, not only ridiculous, they're crazy. Okay.
Yeah.
But I don't understand why. I think one of the impediments to businesses downtown is parking.
Oh, yeah.
And not just parking, but also paying, you know, the meter maid coming around, like trying to, you know, nail you as
There's
soon
a
as
gotcha mentality
yeah.
in some respects.
Has anybody toyed with the idea of somebody comes into your restaurant and they leave and they get like a little ticket that they can actually get a rebate on their parking, so that you're encouraging people to come down because the parking's free if you go into a restaurant or go into a jewelry store, or if you're doing something downtown, here, we'll let you park for free.
I think validated parking is a great idea. I will say that the mayor and the city did a great job. They used to make the meters, they used to make you put money in the meters till 8 o'clock at night. And I know there was some logic behind that it would keep people at the Verizon Arena from taking all the good parking spots, you know, that at least if they make it till 8 o'clock at night, they're not going to park there because their show's going to go till 10 o'clock at night. They've reduced that now to the meters around the restaurant, around the Chop House, is 5:30.
Yep.
So they've at least said it's kind of free parking after 5:30. But validated parking, I think, would really help the downtown area, and just encouraging, more ports. I sometimes get frustrated that we can't have a downtown like Portsmouth or like Nashua. I think we can do a better job, and I think over time we may.
Well, Chuck, we're out of time, but I wanted to thank you very much.
Yeah, sorry, Tim. We have the caller on hold, but we really don't have time to grab him.
What's
sorry
website?
about that, Tim.
Website.
Website is chuckrolacheknh.com, and I answer the blog, I answer any questions. Don't hesitate to have anybody call
So
me.
next Tuesday, primary.
Executive Council District 4.
Yeah. Vote for Chuck and vote often. I think that's
Vote early, vote often,
Vote
like in
early and
Chicago.
vote- yeah, like in Chicago.
Yes.
Bring your ID though.
Yes.
We actually have voter ID, which is really a good thing. We should talk about that sometime. Anyway, Chuck, thank you very much.
Thank you, Gary.
It's been a
Matt.
pleasure.
Thank you.
Yep. Thanks,
Happy
Chuck.
to be here. Thank you, guys.
All right, we'll see you all next week.